All right, what we've just been airing is part of that investigative piece on Cambridge Analytica and how they have manipulated and influenced elections in various countries across the world. That particular documentary comes to you courtesy of Channel 4 News, and of course forms the basis of our conversation now with Mark Obar, who's a data scientist as well as an IT expert. Mark, thank you very much for coming in. I would just want us to start with the Kenyan election because it has been mentioned adversely in this particular piece. Breaking it down for our audience, what exactly was Cambridge Analytica's role in the Kenyan election in 2017?
Now, this is an organization that deals on data science, particularly in terms of data mining, understanding data in terms of truncations and making it simpler for the client to know who is likely to purchase his idea, product, or information generally. So in this case, we are made to understand that they were working for the Jubilee side of Kenyan politics. And particularly, they were tasked with the responsibility of helping the campaign, President Uhuru Kenyatta's campaign, to understand who are the people who are likely to vote for him and who are the people who are not likely to vote for him, and how to convert these people who are not likely to vote for him to vote for him, particularly in the same political system. So their work was meant to create strategies, to develop tools, to develop informational stream in a way that would really convert the non-voters into voters. And this is exactly what happened. But I need also to let people understand that this is not a new thing in the world. Data science has majorly been used by political elites around the world, especially in the developed world, a lot, to just make people vote or make people to understand certain issues that are pegged within the political campaign strategies and all that. It's also been used in marketing. It's also been used in the military. For example, it's not a new phenomenon. It's not a new thing. In Afghanistan, the United States of America military uses it to understand how to win the hearts and the minds of the Afghans, or in other countries where they operate, and especially in the hostile countries. So it's not a completely new thing.
Yeah.
However, the only reason as to why people are so much curious about the Cambridge Analytica's activities in the world today is potential criminal acts that took place during their operations, especially in the countries that have operated in. Yeah.
But given that this is a big deal now, and this expose is set to roll heads will roll after this, what was the illegality that they might have committed, especially as far as the Kenyan election is concerned, that it is being made a big deal now? Maybe
I need to start from explaining to people what these people do, what it means generally in terms of their activities. There is these science, it's a behavioral science and political data science, particularly that deals with what is known as psychometrics. I'll explain what it is. So from psychometrics, you develop what is known as psychographics. From psychographics, you develop what is known as a psychological profile. From psychological profile, then you deal with specific issues. So psychometrics is simply a data development or data strategy in terms of processes that understand a huge set of data that is narrowed down to specifics in terms of the graphics and infographics informations that represent individual in a way that they can match a data that represent a human being to the physical human being. In other words, if you're on Facebook, then I can match you from Facebook, the virtual you on Facebook, to the physical you who is walking out there in terms of your understanding of issues, in terms of how you would operate. So generally, I understand your psychology, and they can do it better. The machine can do it better than human being. So after developing that, then it comes to a psychological profile. Simply means that, and especially in reference to politics, then it's about understanding somebody's fears and somebody's hopes. Because when you understand somebody's hopes and you understand their fear, then you can understand which kind of information to give out that would really convert them into being or to taking certain actions or converting them into voting for you or a particular candidate. Now, in reference to that, we also need to understand the tools that were used. And this is where probably, tools and strategy, this is where probably we are going to have criminalities that were committed. Now, in tools, initially, for example, probably I'm sure you've interacted with some of these websites that ask you certain questions like, who would you vote for? Or between this and this, what would you choose? And then you voluntarily put that information.
And you get a lot of that online.
Yes, you get a lot of that. In other countries, especially in Western countries, they even commercialize that. So they pay you around $15 to get that information. You volunteer that information. That's well and good because it's a volunteered information. However, there are people who have developed tools currently. Some of these tools are very, very clandestine in the way they operate, because there are algorithms, and at the same time, you may find that these are tools that may act as sites or links. For example, you could be on Facebook, and you see something very interesting, something that is really trending, asking, for example, how would you look like in 30 years? Who would marry you this year? Will your ex-husband come back or something like that? And it's because it looks like a joke or something quite simple. Then you click on it and then answer some of these questions rapidly. And then when you do that, your entire information is transferred to the database of the people who have organized this kind of operation. When your entire database, especially in reference to what happened with this, Cambridge Analytica, they just take a sample across the country, and then whoever clicks on that, the information that is collected, though the data that is mined is not just on their own personal accounts, but even the accounts of their friends, like around 300 friends. So you need probably 1,000 to maybe get around 300,000. And then you can multiply that in terms of the quantity or the amount of data that you get. Then this system itself will transcribe that data and program it in such a way that you understand the specifics in terms of how has this person been reacting to issues, how often do they appear on the line. Now, the only danger that comes is that the information that is fetched from your account is not just information about you in terms of your name, but it can be certain essential activities or essential details like passwords, usernames, where you live, how you've been moving, and all that. So it's an entire surveillance of active, actionable intelligence that you're giving them.
So then back to the illegality that might have been
So back to the
committed.
illegality in this sense. First of all, it's illegal for you to pick somebody's, to take somebody's information without letting them know that you're taking their information. Second thing, after taking that information, it's also wrong and morally wrong for you to use that information to manipulate them, to vote for someone else. So it's also wrong to do that. And thirdly, when you take that information, the method you use for taking this information is also wrong. When the strategy is wrong, the method is wrong, the intention is wrong, then entirely you begin to wonder, really, why was this picked? And for whoever was going to benefit, then you narrow it down to the specifics in terms of who else benefited on this and who else did they work with in the entire spectrum.
All right, I want us to bring in Tom Wolf from Ipsos Kenya. I will be getting back to you shortly, Mark. Tom Wolf is now joining us live by way of phone. Remember, he works a lot with data, especially with the current affairs. We have seen Tom Wolf a lot of times, especially on elections. Tom Wolf, thank you very much for joining us here on KTN News Desk. For starters, it would be very interesting to hear what you have to say about this particular expose and the role it played in the Kenyan election last year.
Well, thank you, Linda. Yes, I've just been watching the video from Channel 4, I guess, in the UK. We had heard stories about so-called fake news in the last election. There's mention of it in the European Union Observer Mission final report and so on. In terms of the influence, of course, that's very, very difficult to judge. There are debates about it in the Brexit vote in the UK. There are debates about Trump versus Clinton and so on. I mean, you can't go and interview people, even who've been exposed to so-called fake messages, and ask people, was it the message you heard, or what message swung your vote in a different direction from what you were intending? I mean, that's very, very complicated. I'll just say that in general, in a country like Kenya, where so much of political support, at least for national level candidates, is based on ethnic identity, I wouldn't think such messaging would have as much of an impact as it would in a country that's got a higher level of sort of social identity, unity, or homogeneity. But of course, in a close election, a few votes can make a lot of difference. The 2017 August 8th presidential election result was not as close to the constitutional threshold in 2013, and we're hearing that this same company was involved in that election. So I think we just need to know more about what specific data were obtained, and how it was used, and maybe you need to go to the people who were running that program and see if they'll tell you more about it.
From where you sit and from the various the kinds of research you've done, especially on the Kenyan election, you've just said that you don't think messaging would largely influence an election in the country. What are some of the issues that might be tapped into that you think would matter to Kenyans that would influence an election then?
First, let me apologize. I didn't realize I was speaking to you, Akisa, rather than to Linda. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think there are a couple of issues. To the extent that, as we saw in these clips, and of course, Cambridge Analytica has denied being responsible for a lot of these anti-NASA, anti-Raila clips associating him with violence and so on. So who produced those, I guess, is an open question. Maybe other people know more. But whether the people who made those clips that were circulated on social media had access to the data that Cambridge Analytica had obtained through the surveys that they were caught on air making reference to. They said 50,000 in two different surveys, which is quite a healthy size. Usually we do a sample of 2,000 for the whole country. I presume getting 50,000, they really wanted to narrow down voting profiles to the county level or other subgroups of the population. But I think one of the things that has been discussed in connection with the so-called fake news involved in the 2016 American election, especially all of the hostile, are you still there? Sorry, the hostile information about Hillary Clinton from the Trump side is how would Trump supporters have reacted if Hillary had actually won that election? Would they have accepted her leadership after all of these very hateful things that were said about her, whether based on fact or not? And I think, it's interesting historically, at least asking the question, if Raila had been declared the winner, would those who had been subjected to these anti-NASA, anti-Raila messages, wherever they were coming from, found it easy the next day to just go along with their lives under a Raila presidency? So I think we need to think about the impact of fake news, not just with regard to voting, but the impact it has on society more generally. And although, as I said, I saw a mention of this in the European Union Observer account, I'm not sure what steps were taken. We heard from the Communications Authority that they were going to be looking at hate messages, and also from the National Cohesion Commission. But I would have to be advised by someone with more information as to the extent to which such messages were picked up and if any action was taken.
All right. Thank you very much for speaking to us here on KTN News. That is Tom Wolf from Ipsos, Kenya. And as we wind it down here, Mark, Facebook has been mentioned adversely in this particular expose. What does this mean for Facebook now and other social media platforms?
First of all, Facebook lost around $35 million in a single day. And a number of people are already unsubscribing from Facebook. So it's a major issue to them, a major concern. And in Kenya, for example, we have around 7 million Facebook users. These 7 million people, Facebook users, most of them are the elite of the society in the country. And most of them are very influential. It means that they can make a call at home and tell you that, hey, you know, you should be voting for this person, or I like the policies of this person, especially for the people, the part of the society that is not very well educated. They have serious influence on such societies. So that is one thing that you need to understand. I've heard Mr. Tom talk about, I don't think it has a lot of influence and all that.
Yeah.
That's debatable. But one thing that you also need to understand, there are specific stakes that people, especially in political contests. One is getting people out to go and vote. And another thing is to getting people to vote for you. So, for example, we have always the battleground, swing state or swing counties, and then we have the specific winning counties.
Mark, I will have to cut you short, but thank you very much for coming in. I want us to quickly cross over to